All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Resource Insider podcast. We've been calling it the quarantine edition, but some of us are finally getting free from our houses now. I've escaped back into the wild, so I don't know if we can call it that anymore. And we haven't actually released one of these episodes in the last couple of weeks because the mining market has been going ballistic, and it turns out I actually have some real work to do besides just having conversations on YouTube. But we are getting back to it today with a guest that I have wanted to chat with for some time. Many of you will have heard of him. Certainly, almost all of you will have heard of the group or the company he works with, the Discovery Group. And we're going to get into his background in the mining space, what the Discovery Group is, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, without further ado, please welcome Jim Paterson. He is a principal at the Discovery Group and the chairman and CEO of ValOre Metals Corp. Jim, thanks for taking some time out of your day.
Hi, Jamie. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, for those who haven't had the chance to meet you or aren't familiar with your work, can you give us the 30,000-foot view of who Jim Paterson is and what you do? And don't get into too much detail because I want to get into it throughout the conversation. But we'll just give us a snapshot of what you do today and who you are.
Sure. Started in the business in 1997 in an investor relations role, and through attrition rose through the ranks. And because no one else was there to compete with me for some of these managerial posts, but have been working in the business now for over 23 years. And since 2002, I've been working with one of the bigger, probably in the exploration space, one of the bigger rainmakers out there, which is John Robbins. And I'm at Discovery Group. I'm a principal at Discovery Group. We've got a lot of companies we're involved with. And so effectively, I'm in a managerial role for ValOre, but kind of a support role for the rest of the companies, strategic advisor and investor. And I guess I'd liken it to, we're the venture cap for the mining space.
So this is a good place to start, actually, and I think it's worth discussing for mining investors who are listening to this. When I first came to Vancouver, I came from a technical mining background. I worked for big companies, and I came here and I started looking to get involved in the junior space. And I kept hearing about these groups, things that were groups, and they weren't companies. They weren't, necessarily one company. And for the first 6 months, I had no idea what this actually meant. And, I had friends who were more familiar in the space, and they said, Jamie, you got to work with a good group. And I didn't actually know what that meant. So you guys are the Discovery Group. Can you maybe give us a background of what that is, a group? And because this is a very commonly used phrase, different groups do different deals, and are they official teams? Are they affiliated people? How do you view that? And how do you view the Discovery Group in this sort of, I guess this sort of structure that's so common in the mining industry in general?
The idea is probably similar, but the nuance is pretty important, I think. And in Discovery Group, you've got a natural leader just based upon success in John Robbins, but it is very flat, and the whole culture is based upon the fact that John doesn't like anybody to tell him what to do. So he doesn't turn around and tell anyone else what to do. And he's kind of engendered a culture of independent and ambitious people. And we have a no asshole policy. And that means on a basic level, you're going to like the people you work with. You're going to trust them. They're going to treat you with respect. You're going to be able to leave your wallet on your desk and go home and not panic and run back to get it. You'll know it'll be there in the morning. And we have a good reputation. So really what the group is it's a lightning rod to attract really good people and good deal flow and capital. And so it can ebb and flow depending upon the market conditions and maybe the success of our last deal. If we have a big win, we get more aggressive after that big win and say, look what we just did. We'll bang the drum and try to raise money on the heels of that, or accomplish a goal that had been nagging at us for years and we weren't able to accomplish. Well, if we have a win, maybe we'll have the impetus to get something else over the line. So it is an ebb and flow. But with our group, we've been pretty consistent. We've been able to stay together and grow. And so it is a culture it's fairly egalitarian culture. People are just working together because they want to work together rather than a hierarchy where it is, a major organization shaped like a pyramid.
I think this is an interesting point because I think a problem I often see with the mining industry when we're looking at investment opportunities is often you've got a tiny company, maybe a sub $10 million market cap, and it's got a couple $1,000,000 in the bank, and you've got a CEO that's making $300,000 or $400,000 a year, and a CFO, and a marketing team, and a finance team, and a technical team, and the company is not big enough to support sort of, I guess, the team of technical and financial professionals that are required to make a mining project successful. And sometimes, often the assets a company starts with, they're not complex enough or far along enough to warrant that team right away. And so what you're stuck with, I often find, are companies that are either sort of overmanned and over salaried, or they're undermanned and undersalaried, and they don't have the expertise to actually get anything done. And so many junior mining companies are, standalone companies, but they wouldn't even warrant 1/4 of one department in a major mining company. And, the group model, which I find appealing, kind of allows you to, in a way, pool resources and attract a higher caliber of people and support the infrastructure that, I guess, that a company needs to actually succeed and have a chance at making a big discovery. I know I didn't ask you a question there, but I would ask, does that resonate with you at all, or is that part of the thinking?
100%. And I think that a lot of what we do in this business is based on faith and relationships. So whether the company has success and is taken out, or if it's a small little company right at the beginning of its journey, the relationship that you have with or a group of people might have with the investment community, and the investors, potential employees, potential directors, potential business partners in the form of a major mining company. Those relationships are based upon the credibility of the group in our case. So we are able to attract, as you said, really high caliber talent to a company that may have a 2 million Canadian market cap. And most people that are worth their salt would never leave their major mining company job for a little company with $500,000 in the bank and a 2 million market cap. They would think that was insane. But being part of Discovery Group, they'd say, well, I mean, obviously these guys have the wherewithal and the ability to get things done. And this 2 million market cap is just an opportunity because I'm getting in at a seed level with a very established group. And that's, if you've got a good group, that's what's really awesome for the entrepreneurial minded employee or director, because they can kind of get in on the ground floor in some of these deals. And then if investors follow the group, which many do, then they're always tracking the group. What's the group doing? What's their newest deal? What's happening? And the only thing you need to be careful about is that when you notice that the individual companies are being ignored, that's one thing that's, I think, a challenge. So you do need to be very cognizant that somebody's got to be super incentivized by individually in those public companies, because if everybody's sort of spread too thin, then you're not going to be an effective group. Because in my mind, the success of the group is based upon the success of the individual companies.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you need those individual wins. And so investors don't want to say, well, I invested in 4 out of 5 Discovery Group deals and 4 failed and only 1 won, and I wasn't invested in that one. That's what you
Right.
don't want, right? So you want to be, filling, you want to be filling the floor, like in our case, a floor with high quality people, with high quality deal flow, which will attract capital, which will create momentum and hopefully success.
Well, you do see some of these groups that will remain unnamed that often kind of go for a quantity over quality approach, and they churn out deal after deal after deal after deal, maybe by sheer luck or sheer statistics they're able to hit a win or two out of there. But and you kind of see that perhaps not one of these deals has a particularly strong champion at the head of it, and it's that they're just spread so thin. And whilst this can work for the founders of these things who get in at seed stock and get to spread their bets across, I guess, a lot of different bets, but it doesn't often work for the investors that come in at a later stage.
And I think what you have to see there, I think the outside investor, for example, if they're looking at a group, has to understand there's consistency across in terms of quality of people, quality of deal flow, and the ability to access capital. But then when you narrow it down on the individual company, you must see that you have a strong management and board that is independent. Because if you have one person who is the boss of 8 companies, they're not focused.
Yeah.
They're too diversified to benefit investors.
So what is I guess the value creation ethos of the Discovery Group? Is it, as the name suggests, discovery? You're out there to make discovery, or are you investing at many different stages throughout the mining life cycle? What is, how are you guys creating shareholder value?
In my career, the most value that I've seen is through the drill bit. Unquestionably, the most exciting times in my entire business career when you look at the asset results of a massive interval, go, oh my God, this is amazing. And that has been a huge value driver. So, what comes along with that is, increased market cap, increased access to capital. You can build the team based upon these big jumps in value that are created by drill hole success or exploration success. And then you can start to build that team that can move projects along. I think if you're undercapitalized and you have a very small market cap and a very small team, if you're trying to act like a big mining company, you're going to get diluted very quickly, and really it's not adding a lot of value. When you are making those sort of big, costly, time-consuming decisions, you need scale. But when you drill a hole and people start to get greedy and excited by what they think might come from your exploration efforts, you can really add a lot of value quite easy. Even smaller companies can do that.
Okay. And I mean, it seems to me though that you're hitting some different stages now too. And we spoke a couple weeks ago to Jack Lundin
Yeah,
from Bluestone Resources, which is a Discovery Group company, and
yeah,
obviously very closely associated with the Lundin family now. And they're doing it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Bluestone is primarily a development play there, right? You're developing an underground
absolutely.
gold asset.
Yeah.
So, how did you guys sort of, I guess, sort of move up the value ladder into development stage companies? Is this a direction you see the group going? Is this a one-off because of partnering with the Lundins, who have a tremendous track record in this arena? How does that fit into the overall model?
I'm not sure how it will fit into the overall model, but I can assure you that tremendous experience has been gained by the exercise. And certainly, I think our credibility as a group will increase proportionately to the experience that we're gaining, and particularly if it's a very successful launch, which I believe it will be with the team running the project now. I think it just came, again, it's a relationship thing, because the Kaminak started out as a project generator, and then it made the coffee discovery, and then the thing moved along through that process. The team expanded and was bolstered, and the board changed, and then milestones were hit, and then we made the sale to Goldcorp, and it was a big deal. It was a $500 million deal plus, and the relationship that was formed, particularly between John Robbins, who is the chairman of Kamenak and one of the managers, one of the top executives at Goldcorp, the opportunity kind of was shaken loose. And again, the credibility of the group allowed Bluestone, which was a shell basically with a negative working capital balance, to acquire this asset from Goldcorp. It was directly related to the credibility of Discovery Group and the Kamenak sale that allowed that to happen. And the relationships that John had out in the marketplace led him to Lucas Lundin. Mm-hmm. And before that, actually, Cormark was leading that financing, and that was a relationship that was built up by other group companies. The banker there was highly effective in getting great meetings. So we were able to, so this little company with a couple $100,000 with a negative sign in front of it was able to raise $82 million and then build a tremendous development team and build a board that has the expertise to do that. So yeah, it was certainly, putting a mine into production is not something that the group has lots of experience. Like Discovery Group doesn't have a lot of experience doing that, but I think as we do these things, we'll get better. We'll get access to the type of people who have. We'll have the credibility to raise the big dollar values, not 5 or 10 million, but 82 or 90 or 100. And, we all grow. Like, that's the thing about, if you think about an engineer that would go through his or her career and gain experience and be able to tackle bigger projects, the same thing happens when you're trying to raise money or attract partners. Your ability to do bigger things and have bigger impacts increases.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, actually, and we've sort of touched on this a few times throughout this conversation, is the importance of attracting great people to your group, whether it is, at the top level or as the CEO of an individual company. Is there a blueprint there? Is there an ideal candidate, or is it, do you start with the people and then find the project to suit them? Do you start with the project and then find the people that best match it? Do you want a geologist or an engineer or an accountant? How is it that you go about how do you define, the best people? And the reason I ask is, sort of bet the jockey is a common sort of ethos in the mining space, particularly the junior mining space, where there's so much opacity over any given asset. So people are betting on the people to do great work. How do you guys do that? Where are you focused in terms of finding great people?
We interact socially with a lot of people in conferences. So I would say, if I'm going to say blow some smoke up my own arse, it would be that I know a lot of people, and that's a big thing that I focus on, relationships and hearing what's going on. So I'm really big on that. And I think for the most part, people in Discovery Group are friendly. So we're extroverts. We're out talking to people. One of the things our group does is we have events that are, we're touting our own deals, but we make sure that there's a huge social element. And if somebody comes and they just want to interact, they know that there'll be good people there. And whether they're in or out of the group, the good people are invited to our events. So, we know what's going on out there. But the analogy I would say is, picture a number of people sitting on a patio eating a lunch, and a huge wind comes up and it's blowing tables all over the place. And there are some people that will be scurrying to get behind someone to ask for help, to hide, to, taking shelter. And there are those that'll, kind of stand up and know that they're going to have to take care of themselves and are looking to lead others out of these problems. And it's sort of an analogy I see where there's some people, like when it gets tough, they're just not going to be able to handle it. They're going to say, it's hard, and, I'm just an employee, and so I'm not going to try my hardest to fix this problem. And there are other people that, unquestionably will see it through. And so, I think in our group, we've got a lot of people like that. It does present a bit of a challenge because those are the same kind of people that don't take direction all the time because they're independent minded. But in the end, I'd rather have somebody who's competent in what they do and, willing to fight for it and taking 100% of the responsibility. It's they're in the company, they're in the deal, and they're completely feeling responsible for making sure we get it over the line.
It's a very
Whether they're a
unusual.
geo or engineer or anything. I'm just last thing I'm going to say. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what they do. If they're like that, we want to work with them.
I think it's a very unusual equilibrium you kind of hit there, because I've seen several groups where, let's call it, the top person, the chairman or whatever title he or she has, is extremely impressive and extremely accomplished and has made themselves and potential investors millions or billions of dollars. However, you sometimes find that they're not involved in the day-to-day operations of a company anymore, or they've outsourced that to CEOs or managers that they've hired, and they aren't able to attract people similar to themselves that appeal to investors in the first place, these sort of independent self-starters, and it kind of dilutes their potency, so to speak. And it's like you don't meet many independent self-starter type A, maybe somewhat controlling types, that are able to attract similar types and then give them the the slack they need to actually get things done. And if you guys have managed to do that, it's very unusual.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
if you just look at Bluestone as an example, the quality of the board and the management team is impressive. And also, if you're insecure, it would be very intimidating, because you've got like high-powered, high-charging people that they were tasked with, deploying almost $100 million, starting from a standstill position, and
Yep.
they're racing towards building a mine, and they're going after it. So those people all have to be like, if you're in a room with them, more often than not, you would hope that they would run circles around you in terms of their knowledge of what needs to be done to develop a gold project in Guatemala. You don't want to be the smartest person in that room, because that would be scary, because you can't be doing everything all the time for other people. They have to be independently able to do their own thing. So that's one thing. I think in some groups, I've seen it where everyone's just kind of kowtowing to the leader. And, that's quite stressful for the leader. Think about it. They have to think for themselves, plus they have to think for 100 other people. Wow, that's a huge responsibility. If you have a group where, I brought up Bluestone, but look at Great Bear, Chris Taylor and Bob Singh. They don't need us to tell them what to do. They're on a rocket ship ride. They're really doing an amazing job. They've got a very strong board, but you just know, meeting them for the first time, they're two very talented individuals that will have success, and we're lucky to work with them. That's kind of how I see it. No one's telling them how to do things.
So I have a hard question for you. If you were to invest, or if you were to advise an investor to invest in one of your 8 companies you have on your website right now, where would you start?
I love all the children equally.
All right.
I don't really see
You heard it
like
here
that.
first. They love them all the same.
No, I think they're not all my companies. That's the whole thing about Discovery Group. It's not like, we're not managing the day-to-day operations of all these different companies. We're lucky enough to work with really good people, and they happen to be managers or directors of companies, and the company as well as the people fit within our group. And so some of the companies, frankly, I will allocate less capital to, strangely enough, because I think they don't need my capital as much, let's say, as others that are maybe they need a little more help and guidance, and somebody to come in and put some bids in the marketplace, or put a little more money proportionally in financings. And also, for example, with ValOre, I take huge responsibility because I'm a manager there, and I have a big share position in that company, and I will be there to support that company and some of the other companies in the group. I wouldn't put as much money towards those because I'm not a manager. So, and I would always choose, if shareholders go, well, this guy's on the board and he's a manager of this company, I want them to know I'm also very, very invested financially, and not just, cheap founder stock that has really no value. I put my own dough up. So it's all, there's also, the difference in trading liquidity and market capitalization, that type of thing. Like if you have a company that has a couple million market cap and you've got the insiders blowing paper out, it's very detrimental. You got a company that's got, several hundred million in valuation and very liquid with lots of institutional ownership, then I think that company can handle a little bit of selling.
Mm-hmm.
But really what we're trying to do is incubate and protect and support, protect the brand, protect the credibility of the brand. We want things to win. Companies in a group, we want them to win, and that helps us with everything else we're trying to accomplish going forward.
So you are actually the chairman and CEO of ValOre. And
Absolutely.
can you give us sort of an overview of what's going on there today and why people should be interested in this?
Yeah, we over the next, let's say, 2 weeks to a month, we'll have some clarifying announcements on start dates and so forth. But we actually plan to be drilling there very soon, hopefully in June, if not in June, the first week of July. And we've got a small program that we've started up. We have a PGE project at palladium, platinum, a little bit of rhodium and some little bit of gold, but basically palladium and platinum rich. It's a 43101 resource. It's a big district. And so we'd have what they'd be looking for would hopefully be results from drilling, results from rock sampling, and I would hope that this initial program will lead to a lot more excitement and bigger programs. We're just kind of starting out right now.
So this is actually very interesting to me. I'm pretty familiar with that part of Brazil. There has been, to my understanding, one major platinum group metal find in that part of the world, and that was Serra Pelada, which is not too far from where you guys are. Um, you know, is that the model? From what I understand about Serra Pelada, that was a very freakish deposit, and
Yeah, that's
there's
zany
almost
stuff.
nothing like it in the world.
No.
But is there any other platinum exploration going on in northern Brazil at the moment, or is this a unique deposit? What do you actually have on your hands here?
I would say it's unique. I haven't seen really any programs going on in that area of the world, and really there aren't any big palladium or platinum producers that are actually active in Brazil. So what we've got there is shallow mineralization and mineralization across 50 kilometers of strike. And we think that there's a lot of data to start with, there's a lot of exploration upside, and there's a resource to start with. So what we're going to be doing is attempting to expand resources with this initial drill program, drill targets that have been drilled by previous operators, but maybe would have only one drill hole in them and it was mineralized. So we can drill some more holes and see if we can pull those into the resource category, and then drill targets that are greenfields. So we've got, we're using spectral imagery. It's called Worldview to identify some of these targets. We've got really good MAG, high quality airborne program that was flown by Anglo. And we've reprocessed that, did 3D inversion. So we got good targets there, and we've lots of rock samples and soil samples, and we'll be drilling those targets. Some of them are undrilled.
I mean, if you guys are able to build this into an economic deposit, that becomes very interesting. I went and looked for platinum palladium investments about a year ago pretty hard. And, as soon as you get outside of South Africa, Russia, Zimbabwe, the picking gets very, very, very slim. And there's hardly a handful left around the rest of the world. And, I can only imagine that the companies that have, built their name as platinum and palladium producers in places like South Africa must be very keen to diversify their portfolio, given sort of events that have happened in that part of the world. Was that part of your motivation for this, that it's going to be a highly appealing commodity with not a lot of competition for?
Yeah, from a business perspective, I can see that. And I've actually said those words myself in investor presentations. The South African producers are looking to diversify, and in fact have in through Stillwater in, let's say, the USA, and then North American Palladium in Canada. So that makes sense. the missing piece is they haven't done a big acquisition in Brazil yet. So I thought, definitely we got some work to do, and we're going to have to make this thing big enough. The size of the prize has to be big enough that they have to say, new country, learn, establish a beachhead and establish operations in a brand new jurisdiction. And what we though thought, okay, so my last point on that is I don't really track the hotness of a commodity or a mineral, because I know that can end just as quickly.
Yeah.
I've been burned really severely by downturns in the market before. So it's like, it's just got to stand the test of time. Whatever project you advance and develop has got to be able to handle a massive run in the price. Maybe you'll raise a bit more money at a less dilutive level, but when things crash down, it's got to still make sense. And in this case, what we saw is, first of all, you can see the deposits from the air. Yeah, just on a simple level, it's just brown rock, and the rest of the rock is sort of white. And there's huge upside. And so we said, well, we like that as a group. We like exploration upside. You're walking on mineralization. It's like it's at surface or very near surface. It seems to follow the topography, so it's not like subvertical. It's basically aligned with the topography. I like that a lot. And I just thought, well, exploration will be potentially less expensive. If we get it to a point where we're mining, it's going to be more attractive for a mining company. I actually, in my head, I thought it isn't necessarily just a palladium platinum producer. It could be a precious metals producer that might be interested in this project down the road, because if you look at the simplicity of the mining that we're seeing, it would be a very attractive venture, and you'd have a lot of expertise. I think there'd be a lot of companies out there with people that could mine shallow deposits. It's not complicated. It's not freezing stuff in the Athabasca Basin or mining a seam that's half a meter, a kilometer underground in South Africa. This is, an earth moving exercise. That's attractive. But we need to do a lot of work.
Para, right? In Para State in Brazil, which is one of the most
Ceará
mining.
State. So it's
Is it Ceará?
Yeah, Ceará State, yeah.
Okay. And are they, so that must be quite close to Para, isn't it? Or am I Brazilian geography way off?
No, it's northeastern Brazil, and it's about 4 hours from Fortaleza, which is on the coast. So you go in on one of the two highways, BR20 or 21, that goes to Brasilia.
And is that considered a positive mining jurisdiction? Is there, the code and regulation in place and an appetite for that amongst the local or the provincial government or the state government, I should say?
So there isn't a lot of mining going on there, but there's a lot of support that we've seen. And in fact, we've had several meetings with those at a state and a federal level in Fortaleza. There's lots of strong support from the government, A&M, and just from like even things like the lobbying group, the business lobby group in Fortaleza, the port, we've met with them. Everybody seems pretty keen. The local population, the town that we base our operations is called Capitão Mor. And they've had the project has been kind of going at an exploration level for many, many decades. So most people have their entire life, they've known it. What will change when we actually want to get to a point and put it into production, I don't know. That's always different. An exploration project is different than an actual mining project. But in this area, you got a lot of activity with trucks going back and forth for water and agriculture. It's near highways. They definitely want jobs. They've told us they want the project to be advanced. And, it isn't very populated. It's sort of dry ranch country. So, I would think that, conditions are pretty positive for development. Yeah. And I think, it's our victory to advance. If I think we just need to handle it right from the beginning. Make sure that they're involved and they feel like we're communicating openly and honestly, and we're looking out for their best interests.
Is there significant garimpero activity in the area? So artisanal mining?
I don't know for sure, but from what I've seen, zero.
Okay.
It's not like that kind of area at all. It's not rainforest. They're not mining in rivers. There's no artisanal mining at all. that I've seen.
Okay. Good. So, Jim, I was hoping to take a step back. We're about half an hour into this thing and got a few minutes left, but you're not a geologist, you're not an engineer, but you ended up in the mining industry anyways. And I was hoping to learn a little bit more about, why mining? I know you come from an investor relations and a marketing background. What brought you into this industry in particular, and having stayed here for decades?
When I attended the British Columbia Institute of Technology, which you may have heard of in
Of
Burnaby,
course,
British
yeah.
Columbia, and I took a marketing management program there. It was an entrepreneurship or small business development program. And leaving the school, the last month, I was in this full-scale panic about what job I wanted my life to be laid out for me then, and I wanting it all done. And it's amazing now for me to look back on that and see how wrong I was. But I was interested in getting into commodities and commodities trading and didn't even know what that meant. I realize that now. And I did meet a friend through a friend of mine. I tried to get some information through his father on the commodities sector
Okay.
and trading, because he worked for a publicly listed company in Vancouver. He was trading on the Amex and the Toronto Stock Exchange. And he did not return my calls, however hard I
Your
tried.
friend's dad would not return your calls.
No,
And
but
are you
finally,
still
after
friends with this guy?
absolutely, absolutely, and I'm still friends with the entire family. Like they're amazing. But anyways, then 20th time, his receptionist put me through to him, and he said, "You're so annoying. You should come down and do investor relations for me." And so he actually didn't return my calls, but he gave me my first job. And I worked out of a closet, cold calling U.S. stockbrokers, and it didn't go that well for the space. I started in 1997, and I didn't even think that the mining space could be positive until 2006. But whatever, I stayed at it, and in 2002, I started working with the group I'm in now, with John Robbins and a gentleman named Bruce McLeod who runs Spina. So I worked with those two guys. So it's pretty amazing people that I sort of started working with in this leg from 2002 on.
And what was it that attracted you to joining this group in particular? You would have been starting to come into a hot market at that point. There were probably, significantly more opportunities than had previously been in the space. Why these guys? Why join up with John and Bruce?
Well, even like looking back on it now, I think you could see it was pretty obvious that the market was in an uptrend. But starting in 1997, pretty much everything was down, 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 down. And
Yeah.
in fact, psychologically, I was pretty beaten up and probably didn't recognize that the market was turning. I just thought it would always be terrifying. But I've got a good self-esteem and was fairly extroverted, and I knew they were really good guys. I knew they were really talented, and Bruce McLeod executes like none other. Like he's an amazing guy, and I recognize that. And John executed in a very different way. He's a different type of leader, but you could tell that he was always going to pull a rabbit out of his hat, and he kind of had magic in that way, that he was just well respected because people knew that he would do something amazing at some point, and he did it so many times along the times that I've been working with him that that was proven to be true. But I could I could see that those guys were super talented, and I was lucky to work with them. That's why I decided to do so.
You got me thinking about this as we were talking, but what work do you focus on now in terms of developing and bringing up younger geologists and explorers? Is this a big part of your focus at the group, of sort of finding that next generation of, I guess probably now they'd be 30-something-year-olds that are in a position to start going out and being taken pretty seriously and make their own discoveries?
I don't think I'd do that. I think I don't focus it on geologists, but rather, the entire team. So really, I guess, focusing on youth, and also even people that are 40 years old or 45 years old can actually amp up their effectiveness if properly supported. And I think sometimes people work within organizations where, they have the heart and they have the competence, but they don't maybe have the confidence. And what I would hope is that anyone who works with me feels like I'm going to treat them with respect, and I'm going to give them a hand up, whenever possible, and support them so they can be their best. And so that isn't just geologists, that's, accountants or
Yeah.
engineers or even directors. Sometimes people are like in their 50s and they just haven't had a very positive work environment, which is shocking to me, but nonetheless, we'll still support them and kick them in the butt where necessary, and hopefully they spread their wings.
I guess one of the reasons I ask is, as I look around the industry, there's kind of a dearth of people under the age of 50 in the mining space right now, and there are obviously exceptions to that, but there's a tiny number of people in their sort of early and mid 40s, and maybe a slightly larger number in sort of my generation, their early to mid 30s. And as it looks like we're starting to come into a bull market, particularly in the gold space now, do you think there's going to be a lack of expertise to go out and deliver on projects and deliver the market the product that it's looking for?
There are going to be, if there is a hot gold market, there will be a number of projects that don't warrant any money or any work done on them. That's actually the bigger problem than the lack of high quality people, because in fact, in times of great ebullience, people get money to do very stupid things. And I think really what everybody has to be hyper focused on is that when the money starts flowing back to the gold sector, there'll be demand. They'll be shouting from the rooftops saying, we want to invest in this deal or that deal, or this particular project hasn't had any work done, but it looks like that one, so we'll be able to raise a whole bunch of money on it. And really, there'll just be a lot of big mistakes made. So I think that the geologists that are working in our space, it's incumbent upon them to really think about what projects warrant work and not to work just for a big fat paycheck just because someone will pay them to do it. Because if you think about how in the mining space, really there aren't that many high quality projects globally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a really challenging thing to do. When I first started my career, my first job at a university when I was, I guess, 21, 22, I worked in exploration. And I won't talk about where I worked in exploration, but in hindsight, I worked, not for very long, for about 7 or 8 months, for a company that was clearly going nowhere and had never had any hope of going anywhere. And I didn't realize it at the time. I was basically just out in the field picking up rocks and enjoying myself a lot. But it's hard to make that decision and sort of separate the good from the bad when you're just starting out and you don't really have that catalog of people in your mind and that frame of reference for what is good and how to actually quantify that. Do you have any advice for people that are maybe thinking about dipping their toes into this or looking for their first career, and how to choose the team that they work with?
I think they should, if you're going to be in your 20s and you're educated, you should be able to read a website of a publicly traded company and actually look at the bios of the management team and the directors and actually say, do they look like they're accomplished or not? And, I think, judging by the projects they've been involved with, the duties they've performed, the companies they've worked for, you should be able to look at that. I mean, you won't have total clarity, but you should be able to walk in with your eyes fairly open. You should look at the market cap of the company and rate it against other companies, the share price performance, all these things that a 22-year-old geologist maybe doesn't do because they're not told, hey, you should do this, but they should be able to do that. And I think perhaps that is incumbent upon some of the people in the industry to go into the students as they're finishing their last year of university or technical school and say, hey, before you take a job, here's some things you should look at.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, when I graduated, I barely knew what a market cap was, and I certainly wouldn't have known what a good one was. And it's, it's hard when you come from a technical perspective, when you've spent, the last 4 years looking at rocks or doing, math on and design to have any perspective on that real world knowledge. And I'm just talking about this, and there's no real answer to this, but it's a challenging situation. And I look at people that I've worked with in my career who have had fantastic careers because more by chance than anything else, they got in with the right people really early on, and they were mentored and coached to become excellent professionals. And I also look at people who I went to university with who, through no real fault of their own, certainly no malice, went the other way, and they ended up working for people with maybe dubious reputations or at least poor execution. And they've never really, I don't think they've ever really hit their full potential because of that, and through no fault of their interest or ability or natural intelligence. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's something to be looking out for. And I know a lot of younger geologists watch these podcasts, so keep in mind, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's important. I mean, and that's exactly the audience that would be listening to this podcast. And I'm being frank, they
Mhm.
also should be responsible for their own future, and doing research up front will help them and maybe save them a lot of heartache, a lot of money, and potentially, career marring
Yeah.
actions, right? I mean, I think it's important to look at, kind of design, you got to design your life. So if you're designing your life and you're saying, well, I'm going to start a career, I'm going to do my work so I am aligned with the best group possible, because the best group possible will make sure that perhaps I'll have more stability, more success, more clarity, more excitement, and more adventure, whatever they might be looking for. But the better the group, the better the chance you'll be doing the things you like.
Okay. I want to finish off this conversation, and I think a lot of the investors listening to this will want to hear this. Can you give us an overview of some of the biggest successes that have come out of the Discovery Group? We have talked about, the reputation you guys have built, and a well-earned reputation, but can we dig into the details of why you have that today?
Well, it started before 2016, way back. I think in 2002, let's say, in a different iteration of the group, but still John Robbins was a leader. We had Committee Bay Resources. We had Stornoway Diamond Corporation came out of, it was actually called Northern Empire Minerals Limited. That came out of the group. A little bit later on, we had an interest in a project, the Lanfranchi nickel mine, which was a nickel project in Australia. That was called Brilliant Mining. That was an example of, we talked about drill intercepts before, where one drill intercept can completely change the valuation metric of a company. That was one. Northern Empire Resources Corp was one of the companies in our group. Kaminak was one of the companies in our group. I
And
started
so Kaminak was the story that really first put the Discovery Group on my radar in a big way. Can you kind of walk us through what happened there and what the outcome was?
Yeah, the company was formed, I think it started trading in 2005. So it
Yeah.
was an overnight success that took 11 years. And it was a project generator that had projects across the country. And then the team did a deal with the guy named Sean Ryan on some early stage project in the Yukon, and it was the coffee project. And then the team sort of was brought together, led by John was the chairman and Rob Carpenter was the CEO. And that team came together and started banging it out of the park with gold intervals drilling.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned into one of the bigger exploration programs in Canada. And then Rob left and moved east, and Ira Thomas was hired as CEO and became a director, and we got some new directors there. And then it sort of moved from, exploration to really real focus on a real focus on CSR and feasibility. So those kind of studies. And then I was able to attract some big shareholders like Ross Beatty and Lucas Lundin, the Electrum Group, and then Goldcorp. I mean, actually, lots of companies were banging on the door, but Goldcorp came in with swords bared, and they wanted it. And so they made a bid, and it was accepted, and it was about $520 million deal. And that was in 2016. So that kind of rained money on our floor and put us in the position where we had to decide whether we would retire or double down and negotiate a sublease from Goldcorp, because Kamenak actually had the floor. So when they bought Kamenak, Goldcorp had this empty space at 800 West Pender, and so we doubled down, and we were able to then attract the guys, Great Bear and Dunedin, which is now Kodiak Copper. They came over into our office. We were able to attract Mike Allen. We hired Mike Allen, and he took over as CEO of Northern Empire Resources Corp. And we brought and attracted someone like Doug Hurst, who in the end became executive chair for the company. And then Mike had some really good ideas, and one was the Sterling Gold project that was held by Imperial. And so we negotiated with Imperial. They were in a huge pickle because of issues in British Columbia, and they were going to jettison. They were looking for cash, so they jettisoned the Sterling project. We were able to make a cash offer for them because of the credibility of the group. Really, I mean, we were able to raise that capital and get the deal done. And then we sold that to Core Mining within, I don't know, it was 16 months or something like that. So it was pretty quick, a little over a year.
And you sold that for what, $117 million after buying it for like 10?
Yeah, I think that the actual deal was like 13, including stock and something else. But yeah, pretty much it was an amazing return, very, very rapidly.
Productive year, I would say.
It was good. Yeah. And then, actually, it was really neat as we were doing the Northern Empire deal. Bluestone was about 3 months advanced, and we were kind of doing the same kind of deal structure, financing structure, and large institutional raises. Just Bluestone was about 3 months earlier, and Bluestone was acquiring the Cerro Blanco project in Guatemala at the same time. But we were going to a lot of the same institutions and the same banking groups to help us do that. So we got that done. And Bluestone has been, I think a real tremendous development success, whereas Northern Empire was a buy, drill, sell success, was actually much more rapid. So that was a big one. And then recently, some of the Great Bear Resources is so spectacular. I can barely contain myself when I talk about it. We brought, like in 2016, I believe they joined the group, or maybe just after that. I can't even remember the time when they joined the group, but it went from like 15 cents, and I don't know what we're trading at today, but close to $12 a share. And in my personal opinion, going higher, although I'm not an investment advisor, but I got a feeling that it's going higher. That's all I can say. I got a real feeling. And so it looks pretty good, and that's just a rocket ship. So that, so we've had discovery successes, and real success buying stuff, attracting capital and people that attract good projects and capital. And then we can, so we know when to sell.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you very much for your time today. I want to be respectful and know you got a busy day ahead of you. If anyone, is there anything anyone should know about the Discovery Group, about ValOre Metals before we say goodbye?
I've been talking for like an hour and a half. I'm probably tired of hearing my own voice right now. I don't want to subject your listeners anymore. Discovergroup.ca or ValOreMetals.com. And you can use those sites to get in touch with me if you ever have any questions.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And to those listening at home, you can check us out at resource-insider.com, and you can see all the deals that we're doing and all the interesting stuff that we're working on with me and my team. All right, Jim, have a very good day, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Jamie.